I want you to imagine waking up in a hospital bed, alone and terrified. The man you loved just walked away when you needed him most. But what neither of you knew was that you were an heiress to millions. And the day he abandoned you was the day everything changed forever. This is the true story of Elena, and it will break your heart before it heals it. Please, before we begin, hit that like button so stories of resilience can reach people who need them. And subscribe, because what happens next will stay with you forever. My name is Elena. I'm 28 years old, and 6 months ago, I thought I had my entire life figured out. I was a primary school teacher in Lagos, Nigeria. I taught third graders in a small school in Yaba. The pay wasn't much, about 70,000 naira a month. That's roughly $45. But I loved those kids like they were my own. I lived in a small one-room apartment in Abu Meta, shared bathroom down the hall, no air conditioning, just a fan that barely worked. But I was happy because I had Austin, or at least I thought I did. Austin was everything I thought I wanted. Handsome, confident, successful. He worked in finance at a bank in Victoria Island. We'd been together for 3 years, and 2 months before this story begins, he proposed. I said yes without hesitation. I thought he was my forever, but I didn't know Austin had a secret that would destroy me before it saved me. One Tuesday morning, I woke up feeling terrible, dizzy, nauseous, weak. I thought maybe it was malaria. I called Austin. He said he'd meet me at the hospital after work. So I took a bus to the general hospital in Yaba. The doctor ran some tests, blood work, scans. I waited for hours in that crowded waiting room. When the doctor finally called me in, her face was serious. Too serious. She said 3 words that changed my life forever. You have cancer. Ovarian cancer. Stage 3. Aggressive. She said I needed surgery immediately, followed by chemotherapy. The cost? 2 million naira. That's about $1,200. I didn't have 200 naira to spare, let alone 2 million. I called Austin immediately. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely dial. He answered after 6 rings. His voice was distant, cold even. Austin, I'm at the hospital. I have cancer. I need surgery. Please, I need you. There was a long silence. Then he said something I'll never forget. Elena, I can't deal with this right now. I have a meeting. We'll talk later. And he hung up. I stood there in that corridor for 10 minutes, unable to move, unable to process what just happened. The hospital admitted me that evening. They said I needed to start treatment within days or the cancer would spread. I waited for Austin. Surely he'd come. Surely he'd realize I was dying and come. He showed up the next morning, 11 a.m., not with flowers or comfort, but with words I never saw coming. Elena, I can't do this. I can't marry someone who's sick. I have my career to think about, my reputation. I stared at him. This man I'd loved for 3 years, this man I'd planned a future with, and I didn't recognize him. You're breaking up with me? Now? While I'm lying here dying? He took off the engagement ring I'd given back to him for safekeeping. He placed it on the hospital table, and he walked out. I watched him walk down that corridor. He never looked back. Not once. I collapsed back onto that bed, and I cried for hours. I cried until I had no tears left. I thought my life was over. I had no money, no family. Austin was all I had, and now I had nothing. But the next morning, something happened that I still don't fully understand. A nurse came in with a wheelchair. She said someone wanted to see me, someone important. I thought maybe it was Austin coming back to apologize. Part of me hoped it was. The nurse wheeled me to a private room on the top floor, the VIP section. I'd never even been to that part of the hospital. She opened the door to a private suite, and sitting there was a man I'd never seen before. He was elderly, maybe 65, dressed in an expensive suit. He looked at me like he'd seen a ghost. Elena? He whispered. Elena Adeyemi. I nodded, confused. How did this stranger know my full name? He stood up slowly, walked over, and knelt in front of my wheelchair. This powerful-looking man knelt in front of me. My name is Henry Adeyemi, he said. I'm your grandfather. I stared at him. Grandfather? I'd never known my father. My mother died when I was 18. I had no family. I'd grown up in foster care. That's impossible, I whispered. I don't have a grandfather. I don't have anyone. He pulled out a photograph, old, faded. It showed a young woman who looked exactly like me. This is my daughter, your mother, Naomi. She ran away when she was 19. I've been searching for her for 30 years. My mother's name was Naomi. She'd never told me about her family. She died before I could ask her why. I hired investigators when I heard there was a teacher named Elena Adeyemi in Lagos. Adeyemi is not a common name in our region. When they sent me your photo, I knew immediately. You look exactly like her. I came to the hospital as soon as I heard you were here. The doctor told me about your diagnosis, about the surgery you need. I couldn't speak. I just stared at this man claiming to be my grandfather. Part of me thought it was a dream or a scam. I know this is overwhelming, he said gently, but Elena, you're my granddaughter, my only family, and I'm not going to let you die. He stood up and walked to the window. When he turned back, his face was firm with resolve. I'm the founder and CEO of Adeyemi Industries. We're one of the largest manufacturing companies in West Africa. And you, Elena, are my only heir. I felt like I was going to faint. This couldn't be real. 24 hours ago, I was a broke teacher with a fiancé who abandoned me. Your surgery is scheduled for tomorrow morning, he continued. Private hospital, best oncologist in Nigeria. Everything is paid for. I started crying, not sad tears, confused, overwhelmed, grateful tears. Why would you do this for me? You don't even know me. Because you're my granddaughter, he said simply. Because I lost your mother, and I'll be damned if I lose you too. That night, I was moved to a private suite, a real bed, a private bathroom, a TV, things I'd never experienced in a hospital. And for the first time since the diagnosis, I felt something I hadn't felt in days. Hope. The surgery happened the next morning. 6 hours. I woke up in recovery with Henry sitting beside my bed. The surgery was successful, he said. The doctor removed the tumor. You're going to be okay. I spent 3 weeks in that hospital recovering, and every single day Henry came to visit. He told me stories about my mother, about how stubborn and brilliant she was, how they'd argued about her wanting to marry my father, a man he didn't approve of. I was wrong, he admitted. I drove her away with my pride and my stubbornness. She left, and I never saw her again. That mistake has haunted me every day for 30 years. On my last day in the hospital, Henry brought me to his home, and I understood why he'd been searching for family. He lived alone in a massive house, expensive furniture, servants, security, but it felt empty, cold, lonely. Wealth means nothing without family, he told me. I learned that too late. Over the next 3 months, as I went through chemotherapy, Henry was there for every treatment. He held my hand through the nausea, through the hair loss, through the moments I wanted to give up. You're a fighter, just like your mother, he'd say, and fighters don't quit. And slowly I started to heal, not just physically, but emotionally. 4 months after the surgery, the doctor gave me news I'd been praying for. You're in remission. The cancer is gone. I cried. Henry cried. We held each other in that doctor's office like we just won the lottery, because in a way, we had. That's when Henry sat me down and told me what he'd been planning. Elena, I'm 65 years old. I've built this company from nothing, but I don't want to run it forever. I want to retire, travel, enjoy life, and I want you to take over. I stared at him. Take over? I'm a teacher. I don't know anything about running a company. You'll learn, he said with a smile. Besides, you're an Adeyemi. Business is in your blood. And so began the strangest 6 months of my life. Business school, mentorship, learning everything from supply chains to finance. I went from teaching kids their ABCs to managing a $300 million company. It was terrifying, but for the first time in my life, I felt like I had purpose, like I belonged somewhere. 1 year after that hospital bed, 1 year after Austin abandoned me, I stood in front of a mirror in my new office. I barely recognized myself. Designer clothes, expensive haircut, confidence I never knew I had. Henry officially made me CEO of Adeyemi Industries in a ceremony attended by Lagos's business elite. The press called me the lost heiress. From teacher to tycoon. Lagos's newest powerhouse. I moved into a penthouse in Ikoyi. I drove a car I'd only dreamed about. I lived a life I never imagined. But the universe had one more surprise for me. 6 months into my new role as CEO, I was attending a business conference at the Echo Hotel. I was networking, shaking hands, when I heard a voice behind me. Elena? I turned around, and there he was, Austin. He looked the same. Same confident smile, same expensive suit. But something was different in his eyes. Recognition, then shock, then something that looked like regret. Austin, I said simply. My voice was steady, calm. I felt nothing. I heard rumors, but I didn't believe them. You're the Elena Adeyemi, the CEO of Adeyemi Industries? I am. He ran his hand through his hair, that nervous gesture I used to find endearing. Now it just looked pathetic. Elena, I need to talk to you about what happened. I made a mistake, a terrible mistake. I looked at him, really looked at him, and I saw him for what he was, a man who only valued people for what they could do for him. There's nothing to talk about, Austin. You made your choice. When I was sick and dying, you walked away. You chose your reputation over my life. I was scared, he said. I panicked, but I never stopped thinking about you. I never stopped loving you. I almost laughed. You don't love me, Austin. You love what I've become. The money, the power, the status. If I was still that broke teacher dying in a public hospital, you wouldn't be standing here. He opened his mouth to argue, but I held up my hand. I need to thank you, actually, because the day you walked out of that hospital room was the day you set me free. Free to discover who I really was. Free to find my real family. Free to become the woman I was always meant to be. His face fell. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. Goodbye, Austin. I hope you find someone who's worth staying for, because I deserve someone who would never leave. I walked away, and this time I was the one who never looked back. As I left that conference, I felt something I'd never felt before. Complete peace. I drove to Henry's house that evening. He was in his study reading. Henry, I said, I saw Austin today. He looked up, concern crossing his face. And I realized something. The worst thing that ever happened to me was also the best thing. Because if he hadn't left, I never would have been alone in that hospital. I never would have met you. I never would have discovered my family, my purpose, myself. Henry smiled, his eyes glistening with tears. Your mother used to say that pain is just life's way of redirecting us toward where we're supposed to be. She was right, I said softly. That night, Henry and I sat on his balcony, looking out at Lagos, the city that had broken me, the city that had rebuilt me. Do you ever regret it? I asked. Not finding her sooner? Not having those 30 years? He was quiet for a long moment. Every single day. But regret is a luxury I can't afford anymore. All I can do is make sure I don't make the same mistake with you. That I don't let pride or stubbornness or fear keep me from the people I love. He reached over and squeezed my hand. You've given me a second chance, Elena. A chance to be the grandfather I never got to be. To make up for the father I failed to be. That's worth more than all the money in the world. Today, 2 years later, I still run Adeyemi Industries. We've grown by 40%. We've created thousands of jobs. We've expanded into 3 new countries. But more than that, I've found something money can't buy. Family, purpose, self-worth. I see Austin sometimes at business events. He's usually with some new woman, trying to climb the social ladder. He always looks at me with that same regret in his eyes. And I always feel nothing, because I learned something that day in the hospital. Something that changed me forever. The people who leave you when you're at your lowest don't deserve you at your highest. The people who love you conditionally don't deserve your love at all. And sometimes rock bottom is the solid foundation you need to rebuild your entire life. I was abandoned, betrayed, left to die. But I didn't die. I transformed. From a broke teacher to a CEO. From a woman with no family to an heiress with a grandfather who would move mountains for her. From someone who defined herself by the love of a man to someone who defined herself by her own strength. My name is Elena Adeyemi, and this is my story. A story of loss and redemption, of pain and transformation, of discovering that sometimes the worst betrayal can lead to the greatest blessing. Because the day Austin walked out of that hospital room wasn't the day my life ended. It was the day my real life began.